Hello, now we will talk about the constraints. What is the meaning of the constraints? The constraints is a set of rules or set of conditions that should be met on a single attribute, so we can use that attribute in a table. So in every table we will find one or more column, one or more attribute that has these constraints. And again, these constraints is like a conditions that have to be met so that we can use that attribute, that column. Now let's see how many types of constraints we have. The constraints are super key, candidate key, primary key, unique, and foreign key. The super key, if someone asks you what is the super key, in general we don't use the super key, but it's like an understanding, like a basic understanding of the other constraints. So the super key is one attribute or a set of attributes in an entity that refers to the rest of the attributes in that entity. So it's one or a set of attributes which in one entity that refers to all the remaining attributes in that entity. So for instance, when we select a primary key in a table, this primary key will refer to all the remaining attributes in the table, in the entity. The primary key could call also minimal super key. Now what if we select a set of attributes? In this case we usually call in the community, the database community, we call the composite key. So if you select two or more attributes, two or more columns, we will call this as a composite key, and this composite key will refer to all the remaining attributes in that table, in that entity. So for instance, we have this entity, a table, this one, which has some attributes, some columns, attribute 1, attribute 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if we select, for instance, attribute 1 to become as a primary key, now this primary key will refer to all the remaining attributes in that entity. So we can consider it as a super key, Now what if we select two or more attributes? In this case, if we select attribute 1 and 2, this could be a composite key, which also in this case will refer to the rest of the attributes in that table, in that entity. This is the idea of the super key and the candidate key. So now, can any attribute be considered as a candidate to be a primary key or a composite key? The question is, can any attribute, any column of these ones could be considered as a super key, as a primary key or a composite key? The answer is no. And when we will explain in here, then we will see why the answer is no. Not any attribute in an entity, in a table, can be considered as a super key or a candidate for a super key. This is the general idea of the super key and the candidate key. Now, in reality, there are three major constraints, keys: the primary key, the unique key, and the foreign key, and we will discuss one after the other. Let's start with the primary key, and let's see things that about the primary key. Let's take a look at this entity, which is the student entity. I have entered few data, few student names. This entity consists of few attributes for few columns, which is the student ID, which is an auto-incremented column. Then the student has a first name, last name, and age. And we inserted few data in these columns. Now when I do some search to select all the data, all the information about a student by the name of, let's say, John. I want to do a query, a search query on a student by the last name of John, and I want to get all the details about this student. What's his first name, what's his age. Now in this case, if you could see that we have multiple John, multiple student with the last name of John. Now how we can define, how we can distinguish between these two Johns. Suppose that we want to get the details of this John, which has the name, first name of Alice John, and she has an age of 25. I don't want to have the data of this John. So how can we get this? How can we do this? Normally, without a primary key, we cannot do this, because every time we will get this John and this John, and every John that is available in this database, in this table, we will get the details of every John that is available in this table. And that's, I don't want to happen. I need a certain John. I need this row of data, this John, this student by the name of Alice John, which her age is 25. So how can I do this? Now the simple way is by the using of a key, which is called the primary key. Now the primary key is a column that we create, and we give it for each row. We give for each row a certain distinguished value, either numerical value or alphabetical value. So in this case, what we have done, we have created a column by the name ST. ST refers to the student, by the way. So ST code, which is a text of type text in our case, and we mark it with the primary key. This is the column that will be used later on in every search, so we can get the details of a certain student based on this data which is in the student code column. So for instance, now we have given this student Alice John a code pardon me, by the name of Alex 25. The other student, we gave it another code, Joey 24, the other one Brian 26, and the other John here is Kim 22. Now by using this primary key, by using this special code which is assigned to every row, to every student, now we can do the query, and when we do the query we will get this Alice, because we will refer to the primary key, to this key, Alex 25. In this case, we will get the data in this row only. We will not get the data in this row, because this one has another primary key value. This is the whole idea of the primary key, is that we create a column. In this column, we give a certain, a specified, distinguished value for each and every row. And when we want to get a data of any row in a table, we refer to this code. We refer to this code. When I want to get the row of this student data, I refer to this primary key code. This is the idea of the primary key, and without it, it's going to be very hard to get a certain row data. Without the primary key, we will get all the last name student which has the name of John. Probably there will be 3, 4, 5 students with the last name of John, so I will get all of them in this case, which it is not my requirement. My requirement is to get the data of the student with the last name John and the name Alice and the age of 25. So in this case, the primary key will help us a lot to do this objective. So let's see about the primary key. What are the characteristics of the primary key? The primary cannot be null. The first one cannot be null. In here, I cannot put a null value. So when I insert the data of Alice, John, 25, certainly I cannot put null here. I cannot put null. I should put a code, alphabetically or numerically code, whatever code, but it should not be null. This is the first thing. Now the second thing is that in each table there should be one primary key. This table, this entity has one primary key, and that's what it should be. You cannot assign two primary keys in a single table. The third thing, no two tables share the same name of primary key. You see here, each primary key has a name. Okay, now this name should be unique for this table only. For instance, let's see these tables. This table category, and this table product, and this table customer. Each one has a primary key. Now this is the primary key of this table, the customer entity, the customer table. The name of this primary key is CC code or customer code. Now I cannot select or choose this name, the name, and put it and give it to the product primary key. That is not allowed. The product primary key should have another name, let's say P code or whatever name. So these two primary keys, they should not have the same name in this case. Now the primary key can be used as a foreign key in another table that we will talk about down the road. Now if I want to delete a primary key, can I do that? Suppose I want to delete this table. I want to delete it, all of it. Can I do that? Yes, you can, but if this primary key has been used as a foreign key in another table, then you should delete that table first, the table which has the foreign key first, then you can come and delete this one. So if the primary key of this table has been used as a foreign key in another table and you want to delete this table of the primary key, first of all you should delete the other table which consists of the foreign key. Delete it first, then come up here and delete this one which contains the primary key. Another thing, whenever you use the primary key as a foreign key in another table, so if this primary key, I use it as a foreign key in another table. This primary key type, data type is text. I should make sure that this primary key, which I have used here as a foreign key, the type of it should be the same, also should be text. Now, one side information. When you use a primary key as a foreign key in another table, the name should not be matched. You could use a foreign key name different. Not necessarily it should be the same as the primary key. And it could be the same, but it is not necessary. You can select any other name. But the point is, the more important thing is that data type should be the same for the primary key when you use it as a foreign key. The data type should be the same. Okay, now let's go for the foreign key. We jump to the foreign key now. Now the foreign key will be referred, it's a column that we make in a table which refers to another primary key in another table. That's the idea of the foreign key. Now, how to create a foreign key? This is the syntax to create a foreign key. Constraint, give a name to this foreign key. It's a reference name. You could also don't put it, but it's just for information. So this thing will not affect the creation of the foreign key, even if you don't choose it, even if you don't put it. For instance, if you remove all this, the same thing will happen. Nothing will affect. The foreign key will be created. But this is just for referencing. Now, to create the foreign key, you use the keywords foreign key. Then you refer to the name of the column of the foreign key. References, this is a keyword. Then the name of the column and the table where the primary key resides. In our case, this is the name of the table and the primary key here, name. So we will put references, the name of the table and the name of the column. This is the way to generate these few words to generate a foreign key in any table, which refers, this is the foreign key column, which refers to the primary key in another table. Now these things we will talk about later on delete, restricts, on update, cascade. Again, this one you can mention it, you can omit it, you cannot do it, it's up to you, but it's just for referencing. It would be much better if you do it. Now let's see when we want to insert data in a foreign key, in a table, in this entity, in the mobile entity. How can we insert the data? We will use the SQL query insert into the table name. Okay. 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, 4 columns, 4 attributes: country code, area code, phone number, and the foreign key. As we have, remember, as we have said that how many columns here, how many attributes here, there should be same number of values in here. Okay. Okay, now let's insert this first row. Okay, first row have been inserted. Let's check it. Okay, we have checked this one. We have selected this one. Now remember, the country code is integer, area code is data type integer, phone number is integer, but the foreign key should be a text, should be same like the primary key, so it should be a text. So when we insert the data, this foreign key should be a text. That number one. Number two, and that's one of the most important thing. You cannot insert any foreign key value in here. This value should be already inserted in the primary key table. So when we have Alex 25, this value should be already available in the students table, which is this table. As you can see here, we have an Alex 25. Why? Because this foreign key refers to a primary key. The value should refer to the same value in the primary key table. So whenever you want to insert the data in a foreign key table, the foreign key value should refer to a value in the primary key table. How we can prove that? So the value of the primary key should exist, and the type of the entered value should be the same. The type of the foreign key here is text. In the primary key is also a text. This is number one. Number two, in this primary key table, I have entered some values for primary keys. When I want to enter data in the foreign key table, this value of the foreign key should refer to an existing primary key value. Let's make sure of this. Let's make sure that, for instance, now this is the primary key table, the students table. We have a student by the name of Joseph, last name Frank, with age 24, and it has a primary key code Joey 24. Now I want to enter the number of Joseph Frank. For Joseph Frank, I want to enter the phone number, the mobile number, and assign it to this student, Joseph Frank. But I will use a value of a primary key that doesn't exist in here. Here, the value of Joseph Frank is 24, but here I will, by mistake or whatever, I will write Joey 24. So can I assign this number, this phone number, to Joseph Frank? Let's try it. You see, we got an exception that says Joey 25 is not present in table student. Joey 25, this one, is not present in table student. Let's see the table student, the primary key table. We don't have Joey 25, we have Joey 24. We have Joey 24. So if I want to insert a data in this table, in the foreign key table, then the foreign key value should match the value of the primary key table. Otherwise, I cannot do any insertion. Now, this is for the value. How about the type? As we have said, the foreign key type should match the primary key type. In the primary key here, we have a text, foreign key text. What if I want to enter a number, not a text? Can I do that? Can I do this thing? As you can see here, there is no primary key with only number. It is only text, text, text. There is no number. So can I refer, I want to insert data where the foreign key is a number. This foreign key refers to a primary key that does not exist here. Let's try it. You see, we cannot also. Why? Because the foreign key is a number, is an integer, while the foreign key here is a text, and the primary key here is a text. So that's why both the foreign key and the primary key should be of the same type, and also the foreign key value should refer to a value of primary key that does exist. Otherwise, we cannot do any insertion in this table. I hope this clarifies these points. Now let's move into the final constraint, which is the unique. The unique, one of the distinguished things of the unique constraint, that it can have a null value. It can have, by the way, the primary key also can have a null value, but it is not recommended to set the value of the foreign key as a null. It is not recommended, though it can be assigned to a null value, but it's totally not recommended. Now for the unique constraints, it can have a null value. It can have one or many unique columns in a table. Also, I can create a foreign key from a unique column, same like the primary key. Same like the primary key, I can get a foreign key. So the unique key, I can assign it as a foreign key in another table. And also the type should match in both the unique key and the foreign key. So the difference here, the unique can have one or more unique column. It can have a null value. I can use the unique column as a foreign key in another table, and the type of the unique and the foreign key should be the same. Let's take a look at here. Let's take a look at this table, the subjects table. I want to create a table, an entity with the name of subject. I want to give for each subject a name, and I want to know, I want to give also another attribute, another column, this subject for which grade it's being taught, and also I want to give for each subject a code. Now the code of the subject, I will make it as a primary key, and we have learned what is the meaning of the primary key. Now for the subject name, I want to assign a constraint to it as a unique, which means there is no two subjects have the same value. So when I assign the unique key constraint, means there is no two names of a subject can have the same value, the same name. Let's see here. I want to insert a subject with name, with grade, and with a code. So the name will be math, and this math will be studied for the 6th grade, and I want to give it a code by math 6. Let's enter this table into the table. I didn't create it, pardon me. Okay, let's enter this into the table. Okay, now we have entered this line, this code, this value into the table. Let's double check it. Okay, so the first entry is with ID 1, math. It will be studied in the 6th grade, and it has a code of math 6. Now, what if I want to do another entry? The name will be again math, but I will study it for the 7th grade, and I will give it another code. Can I do that? Remember, we have given the subject name a unique constraint, which means each subject must be entered once only in the table. Each subject name must be entered once only in the table. So obviously we have entered the math. That means we cannot enter another row in the table with same subject name. And let's try it and see for ourselves. You see, it gives us duplicate key. Why? Because a math subject name have been already inserted. So it's already math already exists. That's why we cannot enter another subject name by the name of math. Why? Because of this constraint, the unique. The unique means that the subject name should have one value in the table, only one value. There is no two values of subject name with the same value. This is the entire about the constraints, the foreign key, the primary key, and the unique key.